Well, hello and welcome back to your virtual tea time. My name is Tori. We are back in the studio with Justin Klemballa. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Tori. How are you?
Good. How are you?
So excited.
You know it's going to be a good episode when you bring the big wedge with you.
Absolutely. The monster wedge is what it's called.
Consider that a wedge too, right? I mean, that's not a ginormous 7-iron.
No. If I had to guess, like the loft of the club, it looks kind of like a pitching wedge, maybe gap wedge. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I love it.
And the name of it's called Monster Wedge. But what's so funny about this, everyone sees this and they're like, boy, how bad do I have to get to start hitting this ball club? But what's so funny is that it's extremely heavy. It's not very easy to hit balls with or anything like that, but it's fantastic for demos.
I love it. I love it. So today we are going to be going over, this is a 3-part series, and we're going to be going over the 21 death moves.
Absolutely.
Which sounds heavy. Chuck.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy, but it's basically the moves in a golf swing you do not want to do, right? So if these are things that you're doing in your swing, these are basically killing your chances of being successful. And basically all these moves came from my experience with working for Jim McLean. He was my mentor. I worked for him for 6 years, for 3 years in Doral, Miami, Florida, and then 3 years in here in Arizona, which is what brought me to Arizona. But he kind of identified these ideas of just like, if you do these moves in your golf swing, you have no chance of having success.
So, and when you say, so they're not misconceptions by any means. Mm-hmm. These are things that if you can identify them in your golf swing, you want to do everything you can to stop that habit.
Exactly right. It's something of like actually putting your swing in a state of recovery. If you do any of these moments, it's almost like putting a poison or a disease in your swing that now the rest of your swing is trying to basically make up for this big move that basically crushed your chances of success.
Okay. And then are they in any particular order? Because we're going to, again, this is a 3-part series. So today we're going to go over 1 through 7. Is it any particular order or not really?
Not really. The ones that are kind of pertaining to each other are kind of near each other, but basically any move that we talk about during this 3-part series, you can actually probably at home film your own swing and kind of just have like maybe a face on and a down the line view of your own swing. And as you're listening to this podcast and as you're listening to this series, like, look at your swing and see if some of these moves are in your own swing.
All right, great. And then you're going to give us kind of, okay, if you're doing this move, here's something that could help fix it.
Absolutely.
Okay, because we do want to fix it.
Of course, yes. We don't want to just say, here's what not to do. Now, good luck.
Godspeed. Enjoy the sport.
That's exactly right.
All right, let's dive in. So what do you got? Number 1.
Okay, first one. And this usually comes from people having way too many thoughts. So basically, in the game of golf, we tend to have these ideas where it's just like, oh, I need to do X, I need to do Y, I need to do Z, and then 14 other things. So people tend to get ready to hit over the golf ball, and then they do what we call freezing over the golf ball. They just stand there. They're staring at the ball. They have no movement. They may have a quick look at the target, but then they're right back at the golf ball and they're just not moving at all. The problem with this is that just tension starts to build through your body, and you're just thinking of all these things that you have to do to kind of swing correctly. And this tension is just building. And once again, another quote from McLean that I had learned was just that tension kills your chances of swinging well. So when you're just freezing over the ball, and you have no movement over the golf ball, it just, it starts to build this tension up right before you're about to hit.
Yeah, like nothing good's going to happen at the 7th second of standing over the golf ball.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, and what's so funny is that if you even those of you at home that are thinking about your own golf game, and even myself and probably you as well, when we've walked off the 18th hole and we've had a fantastic round of golf and we've played our best, we've probably done very, very little thinking about our golf swing. And people that are freezing over the ball are typically just thinking way too much, trying to accomplish so much in just one instance of a swing. And when you're going through this checklist and you're just building up this mental and then turns into physical tension right before you're about to swing the club, you've already missed the shot before you've even swung the golf club.
Yeah. And I'd say some of my best rounds, when I'm hitting the ball really well, I usually have one swing thought.
Yep.
It's just one swing thought. And it's not one that I use all the time. You know, every golf round is funny because it's different. It's like
it is.
A swing thought can work today and then tomorrow it has no meaning or it just doesn't work.
I always say that, the swing thoughts always seem to have expiration dates.
Yes.
But when we come across this swing thought, and let's say we play one of our best rounds ever, we always have this feeling, we found the secret. This is the swing thought that will allow me to play 15 years of great golf.
Yeah.
And the next time you're out there, you try the same swing thought, and it's just tanks you. So here's a tip to try to get you to get out of this idea of freezing over the ball. And these are what we would consider good player mannerisms. When you see a good player at your club that you play with, or maybe in your golf group that plays with you play with all the time, typically they're doing at least one of these three things, if not all three things. And the three things are basically, one is that before they hit the golf ball, you'll see some movement in their hands. It's what we call a waggle. And what it does is that when you're waggling the golf club and having the club just move back and forth, you can actually feel the weight of that golf club, which actually loosens up the tightness in your hands and arms. Another thing a good player will tend to do is they'll tend to what we call jostle their feet. So they'll actually move their weight back and forth right before they're about to hit the ball, just to have some movement over the ball, once again, avoiding that freezing over the golf ball. And then the last thing a good player will tend to do, and it's interesting because when you see that poorer player, you see them staring at the golf ball, and then they look at the target as if it's something that they're supposed to do, and they just do it quickly, but then they're right back at the golf ball as if the ball is going to go somewhere. It's not going to go anywhere. But a better player will typically have that movement, but then they're also staring more at their target. And then they're only glancing at their golf ball. And then they stare at their target, and then they glance at their golf ball, and then they go. So if you're not doing at least one of those three things, I would highly recommend probably adding that to your routine. And then if you could even add in maybe two or even all three of those things to your routine just before hitting the ball, you'll avoid the number one death move of freezing over the golf ball.
I love it. Okay, so Justin, when you were doing that, I just noticed that when you were looking at your quote-unquote target in the imaginary studio or the imaginary golf course, the first time you were looking over your left shoulder, you're right-handed, your left shoulder, and then when you were getting into what to do, you were more looking not even close to your left shoulder. You were looking just not over your shoulder. And so I find that a lot of people aim right easily.
Yes.
And they probably also get in the habit of looking over that left shoulder thinking that's where their target is or that's how they're lined up. But you are looking more just straight back, not twisting your head too much.
Correct. Yeah. So if you are one that tends to aim way too much to the right, when you're looking at your target, if you have your shoulder in your view as you're looking at your target, that's definitely an indicator that you're aiming way too much to the left. And what's interesting about that too is that anytime
far to the right,
aiming to the far to the right. But what's interesting about that, if you ever practice and you just put down some alignment sticks, that actually aims you perfectly. What's so interesting is that once you know that you're aimed perfectly, and then you look up at the target, it's going to look wrong to you, right? It's going to be like, wow, this does not look right because you're used to aiming so far to the right. But what's interesting about what you just said is that when you are finally aimed correctly, then looking up, almost using your shoulder as a bit of a reference point of like, oh yeah, my shoulder's way over here to the left of my target now. That's a good way for me to now indicate that when I am looking up at the target and I can see that kind of space between my left shoulder and my imaginary target or my real target, that can kind of be an indicator of like, oh yeah, I'm aimed correctly.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to bring that up because it's something that I battle with too. I aim a little too far right and, just my swing has adjusted to that, I'd probably say.
And also, let's just talk about aim just for a second. It's a bit of a tangent, but it's just that people typically aim in the opposite direction of where they think the golf ball will go. And me and you being people who have been around each other a lot, I watched you play golf, your miss is to the left.
Yeah.
So when people miss left, they aim way right. Now, I teach a lot of slicers as well that slice the ball way to the right. They aim 40 degrees left of target, so they're always aiming away from the trouble, or away from where they think they don't want to go to. There's always this hole that you'll come up to and there's water way on the right. People always aim like way left because they want to do anything possible to avoid that trouble. So
it's a good idea.
which I would agree with. Yes, exactly right. So yeah, aiming preferences typically come from where people think that their miss is usually going to be. And people who miss left a lot tend to aim right, and people who miss right a lot tend to aim left.
All right, great. Let's go on to number 2.
Okay,
number 2, death move.
Number 2, death move kills your chances of success. And this the second one is going to be moving your head towards the golf ball, which actually, towards the target. So as we take the club back, we're actually leaning towards the target, putting a lot of our weight into our front foot, which then typically will lead to the reverse pivot, and we then pivot back to our...
Is this really 21 moves I need to work on? Have you just disguised this? Seriously. I'm like, yep. Yeah.
That's mine. Oh, I have all 21. No wonder I'm not playing now.
But it is something that I can recognize when I'm out on the golf course. Like, oh, wait, no, I'm doing exactly what you're just doing. Like, you need to adjust that a little bit. So explain it again. Sorry.
Yeah. So it's moving the head towards the target. When you're going into the backswing, we see this kind of dipping towards the target in the backswing and almost tilting towards the target, which then always leads to, in the downswing, for us to kind of counteract and then end up reverse pivoting and getting into our back foot there. One of the best drills, which is hard to demonstrate in the studio, but when you're out on the driving range and you have your shadow, it's hard to practice this at noon because you have no shadow at that time. But either earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon, when you have this long shadow, actually swinging and just facing your shadow and just watching your head as you swing back and through. And you can even put a ball on your shadow and just see, is my head moving to the right of the shadow, to the left of the shadow, or is it staying relatively still on that shadow? So if you're one that has that big move towards the target, you can just do some practice drills with that shadow, which is basically like nature's mirror, which is going to show you kind of what's going on in your swing, to kind of get this big move towards the target, because it almost always leads to this big swing back to the right foot and the downswing, which is just going to crush your chances.
Yeah, and just to remind the listener, this is on YouTube. So as soon as you see this move that Justin just did, how would you explain it again? Like just tilting?
Yeah, moving the head towards the target or tilting towards the target in the backswing.
Yeah, so you might be thinking one thing, but as soon as you see what Justin's doing, you're like, oh, yeah. And it's probably something I do more with driver 3, like the longer clubs, I would imagine. Like the bigger the swing, the more this might come into play.
Yeah, especially when people are trying to get a lot of like extra power into it. I think there's some people that just get this feeling that if they really tilt towards this target, they can get this bigger backswing, but it just always leads to people kind of leaning back into their back foot.
Yeah. So again, this is not a misconception. This is not good for your golf swing. There's no good side to this move.
Absolutely not.
All right, on to number 3.
Okay, number 3 is overextending in the backswing. So what I mean by that is that what a lot of people will tend to do in order to like try to create width in the backswing is that they'll actually disconnect their upper left arm to their upper torso, and they'll kind of really reach in the backswing and try to get this big kind of move, but they just move so much off the ball. It's almost kind of the opposite of what we had just talked about, kind of moving into our left side. This is now like reaching so far and trying to get this big width in the backswing, and they just overdo it in the backswing and then tend to move off the golf ball and just crushes their chance.
Yeah, so I call that draggy.
Draggy.
Yeah, because I mean, again, all these are
very much the Tory lesson.
This is weird. I'm relating to way too much here. So okay, let's explain it again. So in the backswing, you are just extending your arms so much that they're coming away from your body instead of all staying, tight. Yeah, and having like I'm thinking of actually almost that chicken wing that we talked of before. Like it's not allowing your elbows to stay down as much because it's disconnecting.
Yeah. And we have a later death move that's going to be the opposite of this, but like there's always this happy medium. And a lot of times people are trying to do something, you know, that they think they need more of. And this is, for example, in this one is getting more width and having a bigger, wider backswing. But a lot of times people go over the, go too far with it, and then they end up just creating all this extra movement in their backswing and then create a lot of disconnection. And what this also tends to do is create a very armsy swing because their arms tend to disconnect from their body and their arms are off doing one thing while your body's kind of behind just waiting for them to come back. So you get this arm run off and the arms are just super disconnected here. And sometimes it gets kind of a little bit more upright, causing the club to come down a little bit steeper. So it's just kind of, it gets this really big disconnection here. And one cool little drill to kind of help you with, and actually I remember Jim McLean saying that he gave this to a famous PGA Tour player named Len Matisse, who came in second at the Masters. Actually used to have him just tuck his shirt just a little bit underneath his left armpit here and tried to kind of keep that connection in the backswing as you go back, because if you're running off, you'll start to lose that connection between the upper left arm and the upper torso. So if you can just kind of tuck this little shirt underneath that left arm and just kind of feel that little pinch in your backswing, you'll get everything to kind of work together.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of listeners have seen people on the range, or maybe you've even done it yourself, where you're putting head covers underneath your armpit.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
This is just something you
the
can
shirt thing is just that we all have that with you.
Hopefully you have a shirt on.
Hopefully you have a shirt on so that you can tuck it under.
Exactly.
Right? So it's a training aid that always goes with you. So that's kind of cool.
All right, great. On to number 5.
Number 5. This one's definitely for all the.
Wait, hold on. Did we miss 4? Did we do 4?
Oh, sorry, 4. I thought
Did we do 4?
I was about to say 4. I didn't hear you say 5.
Sorry, I just want to make sure you were on top of things. Let's do 4.
We're going to 4. We'll be at 5 in just a moment. So we're going on to 4 here. 4 is for all the slicers out there. So people that tend to kind of slice the golf ball. This is a move I see from a lot of people right off the bat. I'm going to bring out my monster wedge for this one just because it has a lot to do with the club face in this particular one here. And when I'm going into the backswing here, if you notice this big rotation of my hands, so the club is just rotating in the beginning part of my backswing and getting this face to point straight up to the sky. Huge move here that tends to put our swing into a state of recovery. So if you're rotating your hands in a clockwise position, especially for a right-handed player, it's just opening up that club face just wide open in the backswing.
I really don't know how I'm making contact with the golf ball at this point. I don't know. This is very funny. Just so everyone knows, like, Justin and I prepare before these episodes, to a certain degree, but there's a lot of, and this goes for any podcast episode, I like to hear things for the first time during the episode so that I can really take in the information and I'm not and so it's not my second time hearing it. I can relate to all of these. And so this is, we talked about it in a previous episode, or maybe it was in a Breaking Bogeys training, where I really struggle getting very wristy, getting very handsy in my backswing because I think that I have to open up that club face. Right. And it just gets to that extreme where you're just showing us. So again, show us one more time about what it is.
It's just rotating your hands too much in a clockwise position where you kind of open the club face way too much. And what's funny about it is that it comes from somebody who thinks that they have to rotate the toe open.
I totally think that.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people think that they have to get into this position, then they get too handsy and the club just gets into this state of recovery early on in the swing. And what's interesting is that when you take the club back, we should actually see that the club is on a similar angle to the spine of your angle. So if you at home are looking at your own swing and you're just looking at this club just halfway back, we should see that angle is roughly on a 45-degree angle, which is a similar angle that our spine is on when we're swinging in. When you think you have to really rotate this club face open because it'll maybe help you rotate it close, when you're rotating it open so much in the beginning, like I said, it just puts your swing in a state of recovery and we're just we're in trouble right off the bat.
So is it safe to say that after setting your grip, whatever shot you're hitting, maybe not a bunker shot as much, but that might be the only exception, a greenside bunker, your hands have nothing to do with your golf swing. Correct. It is rotation. Like your hands are as quiet as they were when you're in your setup.
Correct.
As when you're in motion.
Yeah, we want that club, those arms and those shoulders to kind of work as one piece going back where everything's kind of working together. Because, I mean, similar to like if I took the baseball swing and I'm up here and I just rotate to the right, now that's a toe up position and I didn't really do anything with my hands. I just kind of went from this position and then just turned to the right. But if I'm in a golf position, all I'm basically doing is just turning to the right, and then look where that club is. It's just in that perfect 45-degree position. But we think that there's this move with our hands and arms that we have to do to try to rotate the toe open, and people just get way too wild with it, and they get this face very, very open. And if you're one, like I said, at home that tends to slice the ball, this is a big move that we see from big slicers, is that they end up opening the club face way too much in the beginning of their swing. So then the rest of their swing is in a state of recovery trying to fix this openness of this swing, which usually comes with an over-the-top motion or a slashing motion with the upper body and the arms to try to help square this face that you opened up so early on in the swing.
Well, or just perfect timing of closing it at impact, which sometimes happens.
Yeah, for sure.
It's still a state of recovery. Like you said, you
have to massively shut it to try to make up for this extreme opening in the backswing.
Yeah. All right, great. Should we go to number 5 now?
Now it's time for number 5. Those of you waiting for 5, here we are. Okay, this one here actually comes from a bit of a misconception, actually from one of Jim McLean's kind of ideas, which was called the X Factor. So he wrote a book called The X Factor, and it came from this idea that we want to actually turn our shoulders in the backswing, but we want to resist the turning of our hips in the backswing. But a lot of people have taken that idea and gone way too far with it. And this is death move number 5, where we actually don't move our hips at all. And we just lift our arms and rotate our upper torso, but we have no movement of the hips. And the problem with that is that it just gets the club to get into a very, very upright swing. We actually get a kind of a limited backswing. It's a very powerless backswing where we're just lifting our arms and not really rotating the lower body at all.
Yeah, because to get that power, you need your hips to rotate and produce that power. So Absolutely. If it's starting from nothing at impact.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, what's going to do?
The classic that we saw, especially that in the X Factor book, it talks about like the shoulders turning to 90 degrees and your hips turning to 45 degrees. And that differentiation between the 90 to the 45, the larger that differentiation, typically the more power we can get out of our swing. However, people took that to the extreme and said, oh, well, then if I keep my hips to 0 and just turn my hips and my shoulders as much as possible, I'll get even a bigger X factor there. But it creates more problems because we actually don't get the club on plane and anything like that. So if you're having 0 hip turn in your backswing, it's a really bad idea. Now, a cool drill to kind of help you get out of that is called, it's an idea from Greg Norman, and it's called right hip pocket back. And what it is that if you take your hip pocket, or just your right hip pocket here, we want to feel like that right hip pocket goes backwards in the backswing as if it's going just straight back to create that nice little turn. So if you can see here from the camera, if I just take this swing back here and I don't turn my hips, you can see how the club gets in a very upright position. But if I allow this right hip to just move back a little bit as I'm making this move, then all of a sudden this club gets into a much better position, then allows me to come down from the inside and strike from a better.
What is it called again?
Right hip pocket back. Right hip. RHP.
Okay, say it again. Sorry.
RHP, right hip pocket, and then back.
So you're almost getting that feeling of your right hip. So it's your back hip going into your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. I really had to think that one through.
Right, because the other option would be is the right hip pocket sliding to the right. I don't want the right hip pocket sliding to the right because there's no rotation there. Mm-hmm. And that's something also that we would see from somebody who's doing death move number 5, is that when they're lifting their arms, they might get a little bit of hip motion, but it's more to the right as opposed to getting it to go back, which then allows that club to come much more from the inside.
Remember, you just had, how old is your daughter?
She just turned 2.
So this might be before your Pixar Disney times, but do you remember that movie where it was a Pixar movie where all the emotions were like a person?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See, now I'm starting to visualize like if we did a golf Pixar movie, each of these death moves would be a person.
They would all have their own.
Like there's death move number 5, always causing trouble. And then like the opposite one, like trying to repair him.
Yes.
And it just being a constant battle.
Absolutely.
And then at the end of the movie, you get somehow a perfect golfer and it's all happy and everyone can coexist.
Brilliant. We got to go to Disney with this.
Hello. All right. On to number 6.
All right. Number 6, which I think probably does pertain to you a little bit because this is for the person who hits these low left shots that struggle with getting trajectory in the air and having a low left shot, usually caused by a club face being too closed, which is why I would probably guess maybe why you've maybe gotten the advice in the past to try to get the face to roll open because you do struggle with such a closed club face.
Yes.
And this is death move number 6, is getting this club into an extremely closed position. So we talked about earlier what we would like to see is this face roughly on this 45-degree angle. But when we see people that are going about halfway back and they're turning that face very, very closed, where that face is pointing down to the ground there, that's putting our swing once again in a state of recovery, but in the opposite way. Because any extreme closed or open face just, like I said, puts the swing in a state of recovery where we have to now do something with our swing to open it back up. So if we see this face getting into a very, very closed position, starting into the backswing here, which also sometimes comes from the left wrist. If you notice my left wrist, a lot of people would consider this a bowed position or a flexed position. And then this left wrist could get into a cupped position or an extended position. If you just look at how that left wrist works there, and if I took my left wrist and I went into extreme bow or extreme flexion and had this kind of move in the backswing, you'll see that move shuts the face big time and gets that face into this really closed face. And you know who I see this doing this more often than not is beginner ladies. Beginner ladies who I coach a lot at my 2 clubs have this tendency to not really hinge the golf club correctly, and they go into this extreme bowed or flex position with their left wrist, which puts the left face in a closed position. And then if I continue it up to the top, they get this, ironically, a very Dustin Johnson-like position, but it's just so incredibly closed that when they come through, it has no loft on the club and it just shoots low and left all the time.
Yeah.
So a huge death move if you're getting that face into a very big shut position in the backswing.
Okay, so let's say we recognize the fact that might be the case when we have a very closed club face.
Yeah.
What kind of tip can you give us to, other than, I don't know, because it just seems really like we see that shot out on the golf course and it's like, oh my God, I know exactly what I'm doing. Is there something that can help that?
Absolutely. And what's ironic is it's the opposite of what we just told you not to do in death move number 4. But that's what a lot of instruction tends to do is you need to kind of almost practice in extremes. And it usually needs to be the opposite extreme that you're currently in. So if you are one that has a super shut face, we actually would want you to actually feel that club starting to open a little bit. It's going to be a feel. If you ever got to the point where you were rolling the face that much open, it would be an overcorrection. But a lot of times when you ask somebody to just come to this square position, they still just go back to the same close that they ever were. So if you just tell them like, hey, let's see if you can get to this position. I use this term sometimes for people that have this problem, almost like your right hand was going to try to catch raindrops. So if your right hand kind of came to try to catch raindrops and try to feel the rain, that's where you would get into death move number 4. But if you're on death move 6, you should feel the death move of 4 to get to where you need to be.
Okay, are we on 6? See, now I'm losing it.
That's all right. I'm keeping them.
Okay, good.
I'm on track.
Okay.
So yes, that was death move number 6. If you're closing that face in that backswing, we'd love to try to feel that club face open up and get that toe to feel like it's up in the backswing to not be so closed.
Yeah. I think I keep getting lost because I'm like really like listening to you, and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do next? Like, I'm like,
yep,
I really have to take all this in. Okay, on to number 7, our last one for today.
Number 7 is going to be once again another club face issue, and it's the club face issue at the top of the swing. So this is more for a slicer. We've already talked about the opening of the face here, but when we get to all the way up to the top of the swing, we see this is a very common one of slicers, is where that toe is pointing straight down. And when that toe is pointing straight down, that is when that left wrist is now in that extended position and cupped position, which gets that face very open. Now you can see how open that face is because the toe is so down. And if I just take that position right there and I don't change anything in my swing and I just swing down from there, and you see how open that club face is.
She gone. That ball's gone. That's gone. Wait, so how is it supposed to look? Because this is another thing when I go get a lesson, or even some random person on the range is telling me what I should be doing better. And they're saying your club face is down or your club face is closed. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. I don't even know what it's supposed to look like at the top.
It's a fantastic question.
So show me what it's supposed to look like.
People should know.
Yeah.
We've already talked halfway back. We want that club to be roughly on a 45-degree angle, not too much toe up, not too much club face down, okay? We've covered that position. If we get up to the top of the swing, a square face is on that, once again, 45-degree angle. If the face is pointing way up towards the sky, that's what we call a very, very closed position. If the toe is pointing down, that's what we would consider a very, very open position, okay?
Okay, so square. Yeah.
That, am I standing? Okay, yeah. All right, I just turned fast. Just into the same spot. Okay, let's try it from here. Okay, so you should be able to, can we? Is that correct? So this would be a correct position at the top of the swing because it's roughly on that 45 degree.
Okay, 45 degree angle. Okay.
This would be extremely open. Death move number 7 is that toe pointing way down. Okay. And then this would be kind of a closed position where that face is pointing towards the sky.
Okay.
So this is great for your listeners to know because like I said, if you don't have a video of your swing, it's so helpful to be listening to this podcast, at least having a video of your swing that you can be looking at and kind of comparing. And that's how you could really kind of look at your own swing and see, do I have an extremely closed face, an extremely open face, or is it relatively square at the top of the swing? Just looking at that club face in relationship to that 45. This is that 45 degree. That's where we want it to be. Face up towards the sky, super shut. If I see this on the range, I guarantee this person's really struggling with low left hooks. Mm-hmm. And then if the toe is pointing down, this is a big slicer, and this is death move number 7. We see this all the time because slicing tends to be the more common issue of amateur golfers, is that people are just slicing it all the time. And this toe down at the top is just the position that people are getting into to slice the ball. And usually is paired with this left wrist being cupped. So the idea of where we want to be to try to help get that face to be a little bit more closed is we want to feel like that left wrist is a little bit flatter. And what's kind of funny is that people get into the top of their swing here, and the reason why they go from why they get into this open position is because if I cup this left wrist, I can allow the club to actually go a little further in the backswing. See, this is about how far I could go if I kept my left wrist flat. But if I let it cup, you can see how I can get a little bit of extra backswing. But the problem is that it opens the face. So we want to really make sure that we can have that left wrist flat at the top. So if you're one that slices it a lot, going up to the top of your swing and then just making sure that this left wrist is perfectly flat, or if anything, maybe even a little bit flexed, where it's not getting into this cupped position, which, as you can see, opens that face.
And again, if you're thinking about going to the range and videotaping your swing, or doing it in your garage, take a video from right in back of you and just in front of you.
Yeah.
Well, you want to see both angles.
Correct, because you can just see different things at both angles. Face-on angle, if you're watching at home, would be looking at a face-on right here as if the camera was just straight on right here. This is what we call the face-on angle. And then the down-the-line angle would be as if the camera was just right on the target line of where you're going. And then that would be able to show you this angle of your swing.
Yeah, and just you can get a $25 tripod on Amazon. It is perfectly normal to do it on the range. Don't feel embarrassed. Just buy one, take one down the line, and then one face on, and you're good.
Perfect.
Because any instructor is going to ask for that if you're so.
Yeah, especially if you're doing any online lessons or anything like that, you'll need to know how to do those. And I think I don't know the brand, but I know there's this I think there's like a plastic clip that you can put on just an alignment stick.
Yes. Oh yeah, there's tons of options out there.
Like really cheap. Like
exactly.
So you just clip that to the alignment stick, stick the alignment stick in, and then I think you can just put your phone in that little clip.
Yeah. So, totally normal.
Or just go practice with a friend.
Ask your buddy.
Ask your buddy.
All right. Thanks, Justin. And we will be back for part 2 of the death moves 8 through 14.